Welcome to the You Can Be Unstoppable podcast. My name is Ewelina Szczeblewska, your host and certified hypnotherapist. In this podcast, I will share with you how to tap into the power of your subconscious mind. I intend to share with you how learning how to use the power of your subconscious mind can help you to create a successful and abundant life with ease, how to connect with yourself while fostering a healthy relationship with your body and mind. Tapping into the power of the subconscious mind will help you to learn how to manage your emotions, become more resilient and present in all of your relationships. Self-love and self-worth are the keys to the kingdom of success and abundance, to happy and healthy life on your terms. Welcome everyone to another episode You Can Be Unstoppable, and my guest today is Lois Hollis, and she's a shame guilt educator and counselor and a filmmaker. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your invitation.
Glad to have you as my guest and discuss guilt and shame, or guilt shame, because I know that you are putting them together, and that's what we're going to be talking today, that you're bringing a new concept to the table and talking about guilt and shame as the same thing or two sides of the same coin. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct. And therefore, we don't get split with it because our mind goes to shame, and they say shame is bad and guilt is good because we need guilt to be moral. And we are moral. We have a right consciousness, and we don't need the baggage of guilt to analyze what we have done. So our mind goes, that's bad and this is good. So how we're trying to separate it when it's the same energy. So it really causes us to not be able to tackle it when it's a hard thing to begin with.
Yeah, it is, because even if we're talking about them as separate or together, they both are very powerful negative emotion. Yes. On a lower scale of vibrations that can cause severe damage to our mental health, because I know that you talk about that they can lead to depression, anxiety, basically block us from experiencing love and joy and happiness. So can you talk more about that?
Yes. Well, we have the love energy. And love gives us many beautiful emotions. Love gives us happiness, joy, confidence. We are smart. We're intuitive. We're compassionate. We're intuitive. We eat the right foods. We don't, condemn ourselves. And life is good. Life is good. Then on the other side, we have negative emotions. We have negative shame, guilt energy. And negative shame, guilt energy gives us depression and anxiety, worry, we're not good enough, anger, always second guessing ourselves, in confusion, gives us the wrong health signals. So I am here to say shame, guilt is an energy that comes into us by the words that we say to ourselves. Oh, I really can't do that. I'm not good enough. I'm not as smart as my friend Sally, or I'm not as good as my, mentor, or whatever words we give to ourselves, which are constant. So we shame ourselves, which is worse than other people shaming us because it comes in our own voice.
Oh, we're terrible to ourselves. I know the self-talk that most people engage, and you wouldn't say that to your worst enemy, yet we say that to
But you say it to
ourselves.
yourself, of course, because we're trained that way. That's why I made my film, I'm Good. Because if you say my film, you got to say I'm good. So that was my little trick to get us to say, I'm good, because we hear so much negativity from ourselves. And people say to us, you stupid jerk, why did you do that? Well, that energy of those words came to us. So with the new perspective, we can understand our enemy. And that's why I call myself an educator, because we were given the wrong information.
It
We
is
were
yeah, and I think
oh,
sort of too, but bump into you. We think that I've heard people saying, like, "Oh, you jerk" or something. Why did you do that? And people say, "Oh, I'm only joking. I'm not taking this seriously." But they don't understand that the brain doesn't understand joke. It takes everything literally. Everything that we say, it takes it literally.
yes, and that's a brilliant thing to bring up, because I think 99% of all jokes are shaming. If you really think
Yeah.
about it, oh, it's just a joke. And they're denying you your feelings, and they're throwing more shame on you.
Mm.
Oh, you didn't get the joke. I did get the joke, and I don't like the joke.
Mm.
And I never liked comedians, because that's all shaming. If you really want to think of comedians and the joke as a shame guilt experience, you get another experience of it. And you go, no wonder I don't like that. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't make me laugh. I'm laughing at my own self, and that's not good. So it's teaching us jokes are they are not helpful. It's a way of joking you, but putting more shame on it so you don't get it.
Yeah, that's that's an interesting perspective. Yes.
So it's shame guilt everywhere. And that's what we have to learn, is that it's in our music, in our government, in our society, in our upbringing, our teachers, our mothers, our fathers. They're not bad people. It's just that we were taught that way because our parents were taught that way. And our culture supports it.
Yeah, I call this social domestication, because we learn all of this by observing from the day
Yes,
we were born, and even when we are still in mother's
in utero.
wombs. In
Yeah,
yeah, we already start learning, especially in the third trimester. So it's so important to be very mindful of the words that we are
that's
using, because
that's a great word to use, mindful. And that's my job, is to say, hello,
Mhm.
look at this. And we are going to have this talk now, and you make it interesting. However, next week you'll forget about it because it's in the consciousness. So that's why I have books and films, and that you got to keep on at it, because you're deluged with more shame guilt processes than you have ammunition against it. But the more you live a life that I have blind, what am I seeing? Is that shame guilt? You have to analyze things because it's bombarded all the time. And the beauty of not having shame guilt makes you so powerful and feeling so wonderful. The payoff is awesome.
What brings to mind is to regaining that personal power and knowing who you are and tackling all those limiting beliefs and stories that we tell ourselves, and not worried or about being bothered, and taking personally what anyone say, and knowing one's boundaries. Because I was someone who used to engage in people pleasing, and I was very concerned about what someone else may think about me. But as I recovered my personal power, I don't really care anymore about, and especially being in a public eye, building a business, growing a business, there's people saying things to you that you just have to be able to just like, whatever, just let it slide.
Yeah, just get away from me. But that's the first step, is being aware of it. And then when we make friends with our inner critic, magic happens, because our inner critic is so valuable to us as a protector. But your inner critic was taught the same way as you were taught to shame people. So your inner critic went to the shame guilt school, the same as you went to the shame guilt school.
Mm-hmm.
So once you understand that shame guilt is not necessary, it can only hurt you, then your inner critic can be taught by you the same thing that you have just learned. And so your inner critic wants to be protective of you, but he only has one thing in his mind or in his toolbox, is shame guilt energy. He doesn't know how to be loving.
So then how do you switch the narrative? How do you make the inner critic your best friend and your cheerleader and deal with whatever is going on in your subconscious mind that, you know, you've learned and brought you up today to today?
And we don't make him do it. He comes, like you have free will. You can say, oh, I accept what she's saying, or I don't.
Mm-hmm.
So the inner critic is going to do the same thing.
Okay.
And you can't say you've got to do this because that is how you fell down. You can't do that to him, him or her, because they are an actual entity within you, as well as your inner kids and so forth and so on. So we say hi. Like when we first met, hi, how are you? And they probably will say, no, I don't talk to you because you're too stupid. But that's normal.
Powerful.
That's normal.
Yeah, that's powerful, because I've had clients, when I ask them to talk to the inner child, to the younger version of themselves that they felt like that failed because of what happened to them. And I always ask them, like, talk to that inner child regularly, check what is that you need. What can I do to satisfy all those needs and desires that you have, rather than sabotage ourselves by doing the complete opposite?
Exactly. So the inner critic is the same, but the inner critic is negative, not very negative, is negative. So the inner critic is living in the timeline when you were 2 and 3. Like my inner critic was in 1950, 1960. I, as an adult, am living in 2022. So we have to tell him times have changed. Can you come and be with me in 2022 and not in 1950? No one told him or her that you are now an adult. He still feels you are a child. Isn't that interesting?
That is powerful, because that kind of reminds me about a session I just had a few days ago with a client around guilt. So it was a guilt and self-doubt for her, and this part of her that created that guilt, and there was a pattern of behavior in her life, appeared when she was 6. Okay, and then I had other client who had troubles with control in her life, so she wanted to tightly control everything. Her part came into life when she was 3, and that part of her still thought today, so she's 32, the part still thought that she's free, and it was absolutely ruining her life, because she was completely lost in herself, because her conscious and subconscious were in completely opposite directions. Part thinking, so imagine a 32-year-old woman having a tantrums of a 3-year-old, emotional tantrums of a 3-year-old. No wonder she felt lost.
Right.
And that's powerful when you understand this and you get to the bottom of it.
Yes. Now, what I add to that is that the person feeling the guilt, feeling the shame, can actually see it. And you can actually say, no, you're actually taking the shame guilt, or the shame guilt's coming from the person, out. They can say no. So you can teach them to say, no, don't accept that shame guilt. And it has to go, because shame guilt dissolves in detection.
That is true, yeah, because shame lives in the darkness.
It lives in the dark, because, and light is knowledge. So when you're talking with our inner children, we're shedding light, and then the light shows the darkness. and then the darkness has to leave. That's why it works.
Yeah, well, I call this self-awareness. So, I always say, like, you can't fix what you don't understand. So when you're aware, where did you acquire that pattern, and you know what's on, then you shone a light on that shadows that were, haunting you for years, and you didn't know, because we are a walking habit. We've created this, and then we become so habitual in the way we think and the way we do things that we don't even know that we're doing it.
It's all unconscious. Now, the inner critic is very, very important, because the inner critic is our shame guilt producer. Okay? So no matter how much work you do, how much healing you do, how much meditation you do, if your shame guilt inner critic is still throwing shame at you, you're never going to rise above it. So
Yeah.
the inner critic is so vitally important, because he is the CEO of your personality. And it takes a little time to make friends with your inner critic. How do you do it? Well, I am now, 50 years old, and I've learned a lot about shame guilt. I've been studying Lois's work, and I know that it's not the best way to live. And I am changing my life. So I am changing my life. So therefore you can change your life too. You don't have to give me shame and guilt, because I understand how it works, and I understand how it comes to me and how it hurts me.
Oh, absolutely. And I believe we can all change at any age.
I'm 78. Yeah, I'm still changing.
Yeah.
It's the best year. Every year gets better.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what my emphasis on, my inner critic is called King. He calls himself King. And he changed his job from putting shame, guilt, energy on me. But he's got a bigger job, and he has a vacation because he don't have to babysit me 24 hours, 7 days a week. He flies around and finds me beautiful, loving podcast people like you. So that's his job. That's his job.
Say that a lot of people are actually really afraid to face the inner voice.
Well, that's okay. Eventually they will. Again, I have a film on that. I'm out of discord into harmony, and I talk to all my emotions and the inner critic and so forth, and we all make friends with each other. Of course, it didn't happen overnight, but I got tired of talking to therapists about my emotions. I decided to talk to them.
Yeah, that is true, because emotions are there for a reason, and running away from them is not helpful. We actually have to face them, feel them, express them, and let them go.
And they want to meet us, and they want to meet us as well. So once our inner critic understands about the shame guilt, that it doesn't help him or her, and it doesn't help us, he gets rid of it. But he has to come to that own decision himself. And your life just totally changed, because you are always fighting yourself unconsciously and then consciously. You're always in it. We don't always think it is, but we are always in a war. Can you imagine if you had all that energy of not fighting and being productive, or just being happy?
Oh, absolutely, because we use so much energy maintaining those unhelpful patterns on a daily basis that it's ridiculous.
Of course it is, but we have to know that it is possible. And that's my passion, is to bring forth that shame guilt is a negative energy. Some people call it a leech. Some people call it an evil wizard that messes with my mind. Some people call it an invader. You can name it anything you want. But shame guilt is a thing that affects us. And if it's outside of us, we can say no.
What would you say to someone who doesn't know, like they're struggling with shame, guilt, they're struggling, but they don't really know what would they have to do? What would be the best approach for them to detect that this is what they
to,
are struggling.
well, it's kind of like our mind seeks the truth. And sometimes when you just hear a few words, it just clicks. And sometimes it's longer for people and sometimes it isn't. But eventually you can understand it. And I use the analogy of a computer virus
Mhm.
because everybody knows what a computer virus can do to their computer. They definitely know that when a computer, which they can't see, comes in and it just, wipes out their computer, they lose their this, they lose that. So it's just bad. There's nothing good about a computer virus. So I say that shame guilt is that same kind of energy, not a computer virus, but it's an energy that's not human. And then it comes into you by your words and other people's words, and it messes up your nervous system. Your brain doesn't work as well. You get confused, you get tired, your emotions turn from positive to negative, compassion turns to depression, intuition turns to anxiety, passion turns to anger. So everything goes negative because of the negative energy. And then what do you need? You need a virus removal program or a shame guilt removal program. I mean, you really just have to get it out. And that's the best analogy that I've come up with. And people can always listen to my podcast because we have been so taught the shame guilt way that you're going to have to listen to a couple podcasts to get it.
Mhm.
Your mind will definitely get it, but you have this big clump of shame guilt knowledge. And then you have this information coming in, and it's like, I don't understand that. And I agree, you should be skeptical. You have to make up your own mind.
Yeah, and when
And
we
that's
hear
the beauty
when we hear the information,
of us
our
being human. We have free choice.
Mhm. Yeah, when we hear information, we delete, distort, and generalize the information based upon what we've learned, heard, our beliefs and stories. So when we're learning new things, we sometimes need to hear things over and over and over before we actually like, I think I get it now. Can you tell me what has led you to become shame guilt researcher, educator, filmmaker? What has happened in your life when you're like, I think this is a good idea?
That's a loaded question.
Well,
Well,
only say as much as you are comfortable with.
yeah, no, it's great. It's a perfect question because it wasn't like like 30, 40 said, oh, I want to be a shame guilt educator. I didn't even know that those words existed because
Mm,
I never thought about shame. And that was my problem because I was so loaded with shame, I couldn't see it.
mm,
In my 50s, 40s, 50s, I started to slide down being very depressed, anxious, and very ill physically. And that was because of a very abusive childhood, which I never really addressed
mhm.
because I was very active. You know how we are in the 20s and 30s and
Yeah.
doing in the world. And I thought that was great. However, my emotions took over me
Mhm.
and I felt extremely guilt ridden and depressed. I mean, there was times I couldn't even get out of bed. I was so depressed. And it had no reason logically because I was very successful as a nurse. I created the first kidney hemodialysis unit in the country and did many speaking engagements and wrote manuals and I was very well known. And here I am lying in bed from depression, which makes no sense at all. And in one of the therapy sessions, group sessions, someone came to me and said, Lois, what do you do about shame? And I went, that is a very odd word. I don't know. I never even thought of the word shame.
Mhm.
And that's so crazy because that's all I was, is in shame, because I was lying in bed, depressed. And I went to the not the internet. We didn't have internet in 2000. We went to the library.
Yeah, no, those days.
That was way far along. So the only book I could find was Bradshaw's book.
Mhm.
And he said, shame is a sickness of the soul. And I went, that's very interesting. And so I looked at the signs of shame. You know, you're not good enough,
Mhm.
you feel bad, it had many, many, and my mind's going, well, that's how I feel. I don't feel I feel totally stupid. I'm unloved, unwanted. Nobody likes me. I can't do anything. And I'm going, I guess that's what they call shame. I
Mm.
mean, it's, but it's true. And your question is so good because people don't connect their feeling with shame
No, that is true.
because it's in the unconscious mind. And how would we want to think about it anyway? Because, shame is a putrid word.
It is a loaded word.
Yeah. And to say to somebody, oh, I have shame, they go, oh my God, you poor kid, you're terrible. Don't even talk to me. I mean, it was taboo. So it makes good sense that I didn't even have that in my conscious vocabulary. Because when someone said, what do you do about shame? And I went, gee, I don't know. I don't even know shame. And that's typical.
Mhm.
So eventually, my investigative mind was able to put things together. I had several spiritual experiences in my life. So I tended to get information that you don't find in books. And with that information, I was putting my life together
Mhm.
and learning that those words, shame, guilt, were really important because they compromised everything I had. I was depressed, I was anxious, I was guilt ridden, I had no energy. And it was like an aha moment. And so I was able to work with it. And also, I saw the shame guilt within my little children inside
Mm.
of me, my personality. And I just said, well, we don't want that because it's an ugly thing. We threw it out. And I kept on doing that naturally. That's why I said, what we're teaching, what you're talking about is really a natural process of talking to ourselves and helping ourselves get um, self-worthy and getting rid of the shame guilt. Well, this took years, to accomplish because I didn't have Lois talking to me. If you know what I'm saying, there wasn't someone helping me. So I
Yeah.
was in very virgin territory. But what happened was I was getting healthier. My whole body was healed. And of course, I had, a very good healers working with my body to help support the emotional process I was going through.
Mhm.
But I was gaining health. And the more work I did within myself, I got healthy. And so people came to me and said, Lois, how did you change? You look so good now and you talk much different. You're out of bed. And I said, I'm just getting rid of shame. I used shame and guilt at that time from my body and my emotions. And they said, can we do that? I said, well, I guess so. I'm just talking to myself. And so after they talked with me and I showed them what I was doing, they too got healthy in a quicker time because I now knew what process.
Mhm.
And then
It's
their
That's
friends and relatives came, and that's
powerful.
how I became who I am. And so I had to think of a name to call me. And I said, I'm a shame guilt educator. And everybody says, you can't use the word shame because everybody's going to be upset with you. And they were right. I couldn't talk anywhere because I only talk on shame and nobody wants to hear about it. And I said, but if you don't talk about it, then you're stuck with it.
But that's what happens. We don't teach children how to deal with emotions. So let's say a child's got an anger tantrum, we say you can't be angry and we punish it, rather than say, okay, well, this is the anger and this is how we deal with it. And then the child grows up, doesn't know how to deal with the anger, disassociate from those emotions, and then it grows up to an adult who either have angry tantrums or shuts down, dismiss those energies. And I think a lot of people still doesn't quite accept the energy is the emotions and an energy in motions. And if we do not process it, it gets stuck in our body, causing havoc later down the line.
Yeah, and that's why I use the computer virus analogy, because you don't see the computer virus, but boy, you see the effects.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's why I say shame guilt is an energy. You don't see it. If you see my films, you can see it, but you usually don't see it. But look what it causes.
Yeah, but it causes havoc later down the line with health problems. And we don't like, oh, I don't understand. I've got everything. And why do I feel so bad?
Exactly. And they said, oh, just keep your mind happy and be positive. Well, that's an effort, and you wear down after a while. And you think, oh my God, how bad am I? I do all these positive meditations and all these different words, and I'm still feeling miserable. I must be hopeless.
But they won't work if you don't deal with the unconscious emotions, whatever is going on in you, because we're trying to put a plaster
exactly
on something that needs an operation.
Yeah, that's why I am very vocal in saying it's shame, guilt, energy, so that the words wake you up, because no one will speak that. Remember Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz? How she goes to the yellow brick road to go see the wizard?
Yeah.
She trembles, but Toto, her doggie, pulls the curtain back. And what does Dorothy see? A little old man, bald and gray, with a big machine smoking green smoke coming out of it. And that's what shame guilt is. It's an illusion. And I'm a Toto, and I'm asking you to be a Toto and pull the curtain back and just see shame guilt's just a puff of smoke that you can say, go, gone. I don't want to. It's possible, but shame guilt dissolves in detection. And so there's all kinds of ways we can work with shame guilt, but the situation is awareness is the first thing. And that your question is so great, because most of us don't even put the word to our emotion. Like I'm tagging it, like in clothes, they tag the price tag on this, and you know what it is and how much it costs. I'm putting a tag on depression and anxiety and saying it's shame guilt, it's shame guilt, it's shame guilt. And then finally you get the connection. And that's what we're trying to do here today, is show how shame guilt energy connects to our negative emotions. That's what we have to achieve. And if we just get a visual or someone saying it, our mind is very smart and very creative, and we will start trying to figure that out ourselves. So therefore, eventually, I always say, people, can you just entertain me that this is possible? Just entertain me and see if it works for you. I'm not telling you what to believe, but I'm telling you there's a connection between shame guilt energy and every emotion that gives you trouble.
Right. And that was fascinating explanation. Just one final question. So this podcast is titled You Can Be Unstoppable, because I really do believe we all can be an unstoppable beings, because we were born unstoppable. We just kind of lose that somewhere along the way because of the social conditioning that we receive. So I want to know, what are your 3 tips that you can give it to the audience in terms of how to build, reclaim that unstoppable part of themselves?
Shame, guilt is not ours to own or to give. But I would say that when you feel depressed, when you feel angry, can you ask yourself, where's the shame and guilt in it? Look for it, because then you'll find it. And that's the connection that we need to make. And so when you feel that, give yourself a question, say, could that be shame? Could that be guilt? And all of a sudden your mind's going to go, yeah, that was when Freddie said this to me when I was 10 years old. And then you made the connection, and that's everything. That's everything. So that's what I would leave people with, because we're all going to feel depressed or anxious somewhere today. And, just say, where's the shame, guilt in that?
Or have been in that boat, have felt depressed in the past, not a fun place to be at all.
Oh, okay. Let me know.
Been there, but I'm hoping not to be there ever again. But life is life.
But we can be our own therapist, our own coach, because we are.
Oh, absolutely.
We have a conscious, and we need some mediators. We need some mentors to help us to get there. And then once we learn the technique, then we can be, helping ourselves, because we are very smart. Is that shame, guilt crashed in on us.
Amazing. That was a really fascinating conversation. So thank you for coming.
Thank you so very much for allowing this information to permeate.
Absolutely. Certainly, there's a completely different concept that I haven't heard up to.
You won't hear it. That's sad. It's very sad that our society has been so infiltrated with the use of shame, guilt, not the use of the words.
That is true. I certainly agree with that 100%.
Blessings to you.
Anyway, it was a pleasure to have you here, and I see everyone next week. Thank you for listening. If you found value in this podcast, I would like to ask you to leave a positive review explaining how this episode helped you to improve your life. I ask you to do this because this will help other people to improve their lives as well. Share and spread the love all around you. Raise your vibrations to improve your life. If you would like more transformational content like this, connect with me on Instagram. You can find a link in the description of this podcast, and I'll see you over in the next episode.